Hello. What day is today? Saturday. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. I see lovely people that I recognize, and I also see a lot of faces that I do not recognize, which means that you may be new, or you're at least new to me. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Kristen Santori. I am the programming and press manager here for the church. Very excited for this program. Very excited to have you here. I would like to begin tonight's program by inviting you to join me in giving an land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that here at the church, we are gathered on the unceded land of the Nantucket, Manhasset, and Shinnecock nations, whose people are a vibrant and integral part of this community. And we are very grateful to be in community with them. So may our continued respect of the ancestral spirit of this land and its people, as well as each other, be what lead us forward. I am excited for this program. How many of you are bluegrass fans? Nice. Wonderful. How many of you are fans of music intersecting with literary arts? Right on. So if you didn't know, the church is celebrating its 5th anniversary this weekend. So yeah, thank you to our lovely co-founders. So we are 5 years old, and part of the reason this program is being roped into the birthday programming is because it speaks to a number of things that we do here at the church. 1, collaborations, and 2, the celebration of art and creativity in all of its forms. So on behalf of the church, I would like to say a really sincere thank you to Lee and his family, who came all the way from Nashville and Rhode Island and Virginia, correct? Yes. So they traveled quite a bit of ways to be here, and we are so very, very thankful. I would also like to thank our collaborating partners with County Highway and Panamerica Books. And I would also like to give a shout out and thank you to Bookhampton, way in the back there, who has books on sale. Tonight, at the end of the program, as you leave, there will also be copies of County Highway, which I have been told is the only 19th century newspaper in America. And it celebrates American voices. But there is David Samuels, who will come up and tell you about that. So I'm going to introduce David Samuels. The band is going to play, and then following the music, Lee Clay Johnson will come up and read from his book, have a nice conversation with David, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. How's that sound? Good? Good? Cool. Please welcome Mr. David Samuels.
Hi. Thank you all for coming. County Highway, Panamerica were born out of one thought that I had while living upstate during COVID. And the thought was, it's not too late. And it's not too late for us to reconnect to the well springs of the American literature that formed and shaped the soul of this country. It's not too late to make great music. It's not too late to create truly American art. It's not too late to get to know our neighbors. It's not too late to make new things that work. It's not too late. And there are plenty of people who will tell you from one perspective or another that it's over. It is too late. The country's broken. The country's evil. Trump is evil. People who don't live in my city are evil. People who, have different opinions than mine are evil. I don't want to talk to them. They should all be thrown in a lake. And I've lived for years a very divided life. I was born in New York City and grew up there, but I spent most of my time on the road writing long, reported articles for the New Yorker and for Harper's Magazine, mostly. And the thing I found when I traveled, which has become obvious to everybody now, but was obvious in the 1990s too, was that we really inhabit very different worlds. And, you know, the world of working on a construction site in Las Vegas is very different from the world of Beverly Hills. I mean, big surprise, right? But the thing I was struck by, and probably because it was my job, was that I sort of sympathized with everybody because I got to know them. And I'd be sitting in Beverly Hills and I'd be like, yeah, that's right. You know, I hate those people. They're all wrong about everything. And how about abortion rights, you know? And then you'd be on a construction site in Las Vegas and be like, yeah, that's right. You know, damn people come in, build their $billion skyscrapers, make everybody live in a trailer home, you know, hell with them. And living in upstate New York, you know, I kind of institutionalized that mental split. So, you know, half the week I'm a hick and half the week I'm a city slicker. And at a certain point, you know, I sort of came down to my own bottom line on it, which is that I kind of love everybody. And I felt something for everyone. And whether I thought they were right or wrong, they usually knew a lot more about their circumstances and their lives than I did. And it made sense to actually listen to them speak, at least for, you know, 15 minutes before having any opinion about what they thought or what they did with their lives. And I was sitting around the house during COVID because that's what people did, ordering stuff. And my wife said, you know, what are you doing? And I said, well, you know, I'm getting checks from Hollywood and mailing in screenplays, and they send me money, and then I sit around the house and order more stuff, and I get depressed. And she said, well, that doesn't sound healthy. And I said, well, you know, it's not healthy, but everything's broken. All the great magazines that I loved have degenerated. The literary culture is gone. There's a third as many bookstores as there were 15 years ago. There's no hope for anybody. And, you know, she said, you know, do you really believe that? And I said, you know, no, but I don't really believe it, but I can get in the mood. And she said, well, do you want to stay in that mood? And I said, well, I don't want my kids to see me like this. It's embarrassing, and it's probably bad for them. And she said, well, why don't you go build something? And so we came up with this idea. You know, I told her, what should I build? She was like, I don't know. Like, build the thing that will make you happy, that you think would, you know, save America. And I said, okay, I know what that is. It's a 19th century local newspaper, but what it's going to publish is like the best articles from Harper's and the New Yorker in the 1990s, you know, when I was still young and in love with stuff. And it's going to train a whole generation of younger writers to write that way and listen to people. And, you know, and we'll sell it in subscriptions, and we'll make money. And then off of that, we're going to start a great American publishing house. And I'm going to hire the best editor in the world, Gary Fisketjon, who edited, you know, Don DeLillo and Cormac McCarthy and all these great guys. I know Gary's out of a job, and so we're going to hire Gary, and you know, then we'll have a publishing house and this great magazine. And she said, well, why don't you go do that? And I said, sure. I'll go do that now. And weirdly, we did it, and people did want this. And we have about 15,000 paying subscribers, and we sell another 7,000 or 8,000 copies in record stores and feedlots and places. And it really is on the principle that, you know, it's good to listen to your neighbors, and it's good to go places and actually find out what's happening there, listen to the people who live there instead of, you know, making sweeping assumptions about how evil they are. And then we decided to publish books, and I called up Gary Fisketjon. I said, hey, you want a job? And he said, I don't know who you are. Why would I want a job from you? And so I said, well, maybe we should talk about this in person. and we spent a weekend together, and he said, well, I've got a test for you. I've got this manuscript here, and it's a brilliant book, and it really speaks to the soul of this country and what it's become, and it is incredibly funny, and reads like it was written by young William Faulkner crossed with, George Carlin or something. But you're free not to like it. And if you don't like it, then I don't want to work with you. But why don't you go home and read it and tell me what you think? And says, yeah, your unbiased opinion. And I went home and read it, and I said, Gary, this really is as good as you said it was. And quite frankly, I didn't know if you're old and lost it, and this book is pretty good evidence that you still got it. So, on my side, I'm happy to work with you too. And that book was Bloodline by Lee Clay Johnson. We started a publishing house, not just based on this idea, but really based on Lee's book, because Gary and I could agree that this was set a standard of excellence that we were proud to put out, and that we'd spend, a year of our lives building the machinery to publish that book, and then it could be that nobody would notice it from a publishing house that didn't exist before. Nobody would like it, and that was okay because we knew just how good it was, and we had faith that there was a market for great American writing. And it has been a joy to work with Lee and get to know him and his family. And it has been a joy to have that faith rewarded, not only by thousands of people writing in and ordering Lee's book off the website based on word of mouth, which is extraordinary and has made us a bunch of money. But also we just got this rave review in the New York Review of Books by Francine Prose, who's as, significant a doyenne of letters as exists in this moment now. And she talked about the qualities of the book that drew us to it in the first place and understood why we existed to publish work like that. And it was a wonderful moment that once again reaffirmed this faith that it's not too late, that if you make things that truly embody the faith and the spirit that you have, there are other people out there who will respond to that note. And for me, I've always been as inspired by music as by literature since I was a child. I just love music and listening to records, and my father played. I'm a terrible musician, but my father was pretty good. And so I'd listen to him, and I'd listen to his records, and the American voice is as much for me, captured in song and in rhythm as it's captured in words on the page. You'll find so many great American writers, especially since the advent of recorded music, really talking to popular songs and talking in the rhythms of their prose to musicians as much as to other artists. And when I discovered that Lee was a musician from a family of musicians, it meant so much to me, and it gave me a key to reading his work that I hadn't found before, and enriched the experience even further. And when we heard about this opportunity to come and speak to you today, I was like, well, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could combine Lee and his family playing some of their music, the music that Lee grew up with and grew up playing, with Lee reading from his work so that everybody could hear, what I heard. And, obviously most people who buy a copy of Lee's book don't get his family to come over to their place and play some music for them, but you're going to have that experience. So I'm glad of that, and without any further ado.
While the family is tuning, I would like to formally introduce on banjo Lee's father, David Johnson, on guitar, Melody Johnson, and Lee's uncle, Bruce. And of course, on the upright bass, Lee Clay Johnson.
Good to be here. Little wildflower. One arm around my old guitar, the other one around my dear. Way downtown, fooling around, took me to the jail. Oh, me and it's all mine, ain't no one to go my about all I've got. $1 is all that I crave. I brought nothing with me into this world. I'll take nothing to my grave. Way downtown, fooling around, took me to the jail. Oh, me and it's oh my, ain't no one to go my bail. Well, it's old morphine and it's old morphine. That's all my poor heart craves. And 25 cents pays a morphine bill that laid me in my grave. Way downtown, fooling around, took me to the jail. Oh, me and it's all mine, ain't nowhere to go my bail. Thank you. Check one, check one.
Thank y'all so much for being here. It's so good to be playing bluegrass music for you. That's we're gonna play a few more tunes before we start reading from this novel. But thank you for putting up with this, all this noise, and it's so good to be sharing it with you.
Little cabin home on the hill. Yeah. Tonight I'm alone without you, dear. It seems there's a longing for you still. I'll just keep it there so I won't be alone in our little cabin home on the hill. Oh, someone has taken you from me and left me here all alone. Just listen to the rain beat on my window pane in our little cabin home on the hill. I hope you are happy tonight as you are, for in my heart there's a longing for you still. I'll just keep it there so I won't be alone in our little cabin home on the hill. Well, someone has taken you from me and left me here all alone. Just listen to the rain beat on my window pane in our little cabin home on the hill. Now when you have come to the end of the way and find no more happiness within, just let your thoughts turn back once more, if you will, to that little cabin home on the hill. Oh, someone has taken you from me and left me here all alone. Just listen to the rain beat on my window pane in our little cabin home on the hill. In our little cabin home on the hill. Thank you, thank you. That's a great sound, I think. Oh, no, dig a hole. Yeah. Gonna go to a minor key, get a little bit dark. A 1, 2, 3, 4. Dig a hole in the meadow. Dig a hole in the cold, cold ground. Dig a hole in the meadow. We're gonna lay darling Corey down.
Well, the first time I saw darling Corey was sitting on the banks of the sea. He had pistols around his body and a banjo on his knee.
Dig a hole in the meadow. Dig a hole in the cold, cold ground. Dig a hole in the meadow. Gonna lay darling Corey down.
Wake up, darling Corey. What makes you sleep so sound? I hear the police coming. They're gonna tear our still house down. Well, wake up, darling Corey. You better get your gun. 'Cause I'm not one for trouble, but I'll die before I run.
Dig a hole in the meadow. Dig a hole in the cold, cold ground. Dig a hole in the meadow. We're gonna lay darling Corey down.
Can't you hear the bluebirds singing? Can't you hear their mournful sound? They're singing to darling Corey in the lonesome burying ground.
Dig a hole in the meadow. Dig a hole in the cold, cold ground. Dig a hole in the meadow. We're gonna lay darling Corey down. Dig a hole in the meadow. Dig a hole in the cold, cold ground. Dig a hole in the meadow. We're gonna lay darling Corey down.
Thank you.
Dixie break now. Dixie breakdown. Right.
We got one more for you.
Here we go. was giving it everything I had.
I'll tell you what, man. When I was little, I'd be trying to go to sleep in my bedroom, and that racket was going all night long. I couldn't sleep. But it's a beautiful thing to hear, and it actually has an effect on you, listening to those songs while you're growing up. And there's something... That's how they finally would get me. Yeah. Okay, all right, yeah. There's something about those murder ballads that just send you right out. Something about this tradition of music, is the more awful the lyrics are, the more beautiful the melody is. And there's a key in there, too, what you're talking about, that American sound, the American voice. There's a high and low quality. There's
They call it dynamics.
Yeah, syncopation. Well, I grew up in a family of musicians, and these musicians, these songs are stories. So I did grow up around storytelling and the musical variety mostly. But I started writing stories. I didn't come to it directly. I think most writers I trust come to it sideways anyways. And this novel, Bloodline, is my second novel, and it was officially released last week. And thank you so much. It was a wild experience trying to find a home for it. My first novel, Nitro Mountain, was published by Knopf and edited by the legend Gary Fisketjon. He had edited My Heroes, and I was so lucky to work with him on that first book. And I was having a lot of trouble finding a home for this second novel, and Gary was kind of out of the picture, and I was shopping it around pretty much everywhere. The unanimous decision was this book is very good, and we cannot publish it. I think they just don't publish books they like anymore. It's a weird business model, but County Highway and Panamerica decided to change it back to the old model. We publish what we like, and I'm so glad to have found them. They got me back with Gary, and it was just a dream come true working on this book with them and Gary Fisketjon. They really understand this story, and it feels amazing to be an artist working so hard and following these sort of giving yourself to something for which there is no promise, right? And then to be seen and understood a little bit. So that's what you're giving me tonight. So it's so good to be here and sharing this music with you, this music that shaped me. And I'm going to read a little bit of the sentences that this music formed. This novel takes place in Middle Tennessee along the Cumberland River, where I grew up, born and raised. Grew up fishing this river with my dad. If you buy a copy of it, there are old navigation maps of the river inside the covers, and I'll be happy to show you where the best fishing spots are afterwards. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that later. But here's chapter 1 from Bloodline. I'm not going to read it all, just about half of it, and then David and I will discuss the intersection of songs and stories. So be thinking of those questions. Chapter 1. The headwaters of this river come from forks leaking westward out of the Appalachians. They join in the foothills like estranged brothers and are then fed by countless and nameless tributaries dribbling from porous slabs of Kentucky limestone to form the Cumberland, which widens and deepens and continues snaking westward, twisting and falling through the rolling region and finally dropping down into Tennessee, where it spills through the concrete walls of the Cordell Hole Dam, the tailwaters bending around and meeting up with the Caney Fork, a cold, north-flowing river in the town of Carthage, the county seat of Smith County, near where the father now waits for what's his. Ain't much opportunity in this world for boys like you, he says. His youngest son is lying on the passenger side bucket seat beside him, wearing a grocery bag for a diaper, listening. They all slept here in the van last night beneath the Atlanta hackberry trees.
Now it's near dawn and the sky has the color of a bruise. Some kind of sticky insect shit lacquers the windshield. The side doors slid open to the woods and the father can see his wife standing out there half vanished in the morning mist, showing the older brother where to take a piss. Careful, she says, not on the cattle fence, honey. We don't need no electric lemonade, the father calls. He's doing fine, she says. When the baby crunches his face for a cry, the father says, you got your mama's sense of humor, you know that. Everything they own is packed into the van. And bumper stickers cover the rear windows to keep folks from spying in. The father's shirt bears an image of the old battle flag, peeking from his low-buttoned flannel. He turns the ignition to battery mode and the digital clock blinks 7 a.m. The gas gauge marks low, but that could be the incline they're parked at. He jogs the radio for some talk he can relate to. But this close to Nashville, it's all happy shit that isn't telling the truth. Everybody's singing zippity-doo-dah, oblivious to what surrounds them. The sawmill hadn't hired him yet. That's because he didn't have time to apply. He was selling used cars up in Lexington, where he was born and hardly raised, at an auction lot called Mega Motors. When one afternoon, was it just yesterday, his boss accused him of having memory problems, like leaving keys in car ignitions, not calling customers back, stuff like that. The father explained that his condition had an official medical term, thank you very much. It was called far-memoried, kind of like far-sighted, but pertaining to memory. And one of the symptoms was that historical events, especially those of the heroic and violent variety, were constantly bumping up against his present day. So much so that it was difficult for him to hold on to the more recent things that didn't matter much anyway. This job, for example. The hell are you talking about? His boss said. Wait right there and I'll show you. The father walked back into the cinder block office, punched a code into the little safety deposit box, which opened on oiled hinges, and grabbed a zipped-up bank bag full of cash. He came out the front, waving it at his boss, and got into his van, daring the fucker to even think about getting the law involved. Every damn car in that damn lot was illegal to some degree, fake titles, manipulated odometers, and the father knew this because he'd done much of the rigging himself on his boss's orders. While driving home, he counted the bills between his legs with the windows rolled up so the money wouldn't fly away. Didn't amount to much, but it was enough for leaving. When he got back to their place, a small unit on the county line with a dirt circle around a tree in the front yard from where the dog used to be tied up, he found his wife on the couch staring at a muted TV. He could smell she was stoned. The boys were sleeping on the floor. Pack our shit, he said. He called around about who might be hiring and made some plans. That evening they abandoned their rental, drove west and hit 65 south. A hook moon reeled in the night as they followed the taillights down into Tennessee. They got off the interstate, followed some back roads, and he began listing his reasons for leaving, though she hadn't asked. He told her what his boss had told him, offered his thoughts on all that, and said his memory problem wasn't really a problem at all, don't you think? She didn't answer because she didn't know where she stood on that. Sometimes it seemed like his memory was slipping. And other times he recalled events from long before he was born, so vividly that it seemed like he'd been right there to see them. The truth was, though, that facts weren't of much concern to him. If they didn't align with his mythical reality, they simply didn't exist. She knew the stories he told were ones he chose to justify his purpose and place in the steaming red corner of the country. So she kept quiet and let him ramble. My far memory is a natural gift from God, he said. That's what it is. I can see the past and it's right here, right now. God hath done made it so. She looked back to make sure the boys were still asleep. Plus, I like the idea of living along the Cumberland, he said, near Beasley's Bend. That was my family's escape route. His mother had told him the same story when he was little, though when he taught himself to read and did a little research, he discovered that his only traceable ancestral past on his father's side stretched in the opposite direction. Not down into Dixie, but up north on the border of New York and Canada, where those old people trapped beavers for pelts. But even that wasn't the whole truth. According to his mother, his father was hardly his father, just a man who'd come down to Kentucky to paint barn exteriors. And once the work dried up, found himself stuck. One evening while getting supper at the gas station, he met a woman who needed a ride. When he asked her where she was going, she said, "Anywhere." So he took her back to his shack, and that's where she gave birth to Winston on the pull-out sofa only 5 months later. The father ignored the math, pretending the baby was his, but the mother liked to remind little Winston of the mystery. He had a daddy someplace else, whose past was glorious. Growing up, he had no bathroom, not even an outhouse, just piles of empty paint cans everywhere, which the family used to take their crap out of the house and down into the creek. Once he got old enough to understand this wasn't what paint cans were made for, he asked his father about it, and when the old man didn't answer, his mother told him that his line ran deeper than beaver trappers and paint cans, that he was of valorously noble blood, that his real father was somewhere else entirely, that if history had turned out differently, nobody would be shitting in paint cans and they'd be living the good life, baby, right where they belonged, back on the land his real daddy's people had escaped from. His mother took him to read about their history on a plaque at the base of an equestrian statue on the courthouse lawn of Cheapside Park in historic downtown Lexington, where he ran a forefinger over the stamped bronze letters, and above those words the old colonel, John Hunt Morgan. Straight-backed, arms at his sides, was mounted atop his horse, Black Bess, from a legendary line of bluegrass saddle stock. That's who we're from, she told him. They often returned to visit the monument, and he was just old enough, 9 or 10, for these trips to shape his romantic sense of history and heroism and who he was. Later, his autodidactic research provided no hint of his mother's claim to this lineage, but he needed it to be true so badly, felt it in his bones so deeply that he decided it couldn't be false, had to be correct. And just like that, he began believing he really did have blood in the game. After visiting the statue in bed, he could hear the hooves pounding down the street like the tapping fingers of some impatient god. He still can. Last night, during the ride-in, his wife stared out her window at the moon while he told her yet again that one Civil War battle, more alive in his mind than their wedding day, is one of his jukebox numbers. But when she realized what was actually happening right now, she turned to him and said they couldn't do this. They had to turn around and go back home to Kentucky. But he kept driving, slowly so as not to waste gas, straight down into the town of Lebanon, Tennessee. As the family rolled past the college and through the little town square with the monument of General Hatton and left the village limits and followed Carthage Highway to Old Rome Pike, he pointed out the places where blood had been shed and land had been stolen. The road dipped and swerved along the Cumberland River, and when he finally pulled them into an empty lot with a chain-link gate, somewhere in a derelict hamlet called Rome, he cut the engine and told his wife to quit worrying. "Breathe in that good air," he said. "We're home." That was last night. Now it's morning and he's just waiting around in the van, ready to talk to somebody about working for the mill here. He can't see the river from where he parked, but he can't miss its warm vegetal scent. It's right down there past the sawmill. Its banks with soil so rich you could grow just about anything in it. Gentle, rolling land, open for the taking. The birds are hushing and the fog's clearing. The gate to the sawmill's entrance is chained shut with a sign hanging from it. No walk-in applications and no unsolicited employment. But he'll stick around and give them a chance to clarify themselves. Once they talk to him, they won't be able to say no. Nobody ever did. Too much damn charm. The baby's gumming his fingers like little root vegetables, and the father says, I got a story for you. May 5th, 1862, raining, early morning. Oh, God, the mother says, this again? She helps the brother back into the van and covers his ears. I don't want him hearing about it. She opens the styrofoam cooler, slushes ice around, and hands the brother a juice barrel. Plus, May 5th's my birthday, remember? She said. And a fake holiday to boot, the father says. Cinco de something. I want lemon cake with buttercream frosting, she tells him. Blue cursive letters spelling my name. Not my age, just my name. On the real one I'm talking about, he says. The Kentucky Cavalry was holed up over in Lebanon under the orders of John Hunt Morgan. There's a name for you, she says. Almost a whole sentence in its own, isn't it? She turns to the older brother. Like I've been teaching you, subject, verb, object. He's too young for that school crap, the father says, but old enough for your fucked up stories. It's called heritage, he says. Anyhow, he's going to be a hands-on kind of guy, like his daddy is, ain't that right? The brother nods, drinking his juice. He knows words but doesn't use them much, not since they got him on the hyperactivity medicine. The father's eyes go gray as he traces an invisible map in front of him and starts telling how pickets were set along the road going into town, the very roads they drove last night, and how 800 men were camped on the grounds of Cumberland College and all over the public square. Meanwhile, the Union General, Ebenezer Dumont, was leading his troops along Murfreesboro Pike, where waiting for them was a schoolboy keeping dry beneath a cedar. And when he saw the column of Union cavalry coming up the road, he jumped on his horse and got out in front of them and started shouting about the Yankees coming. And then, the father says, turning to the baby, they shot him dead as bacon. He gets so lost in describing the ensuing battle that he doesn't notice a woman has just unlocked the gate and is coming across the gravel toward their van. She takes her time approaching. Her hair is pulled into a loose braid with strands around her ears, the color of fishing line. She taps on his door. Who the hell? The father says. My name's Miss Becca. Can I help you? Well, I don't know, he says. Can you? She takes a metal case from her shirt pocket, pulls out a hand-rolled cigarette and lights it with a wooden match. Now, who are y'all? Winston Alcorn, he says. And back there's Mandy, he says, with little James in her arms, and that's Dustin next to her. I heard y'all pulling in here around midnight, she says. You get any sleep? More than we could handle, Winston says. You live nearby or something? Closer than Kentucky, she says. Well, how'd you know that? Mandy asks him. Plates, Miss Becca says. She's sharp, Winston says. What brought you down here, she says. Work. Miss Becca takes a drag and speaks through the smoke. You'll need to drive into Nashville for any of that. I called around, Winston says. Heard this sawmill was hiring. You try the nuclear plant over in Hartsville? They ain't open yet. Don't they need help building it or something? I've worked sawmills before, he says, and I heard this one offers good insurance stuff, family plans. Somebody did his homework, she says. Where in Kentucky y'all coming from? Home of the colonel who lost his horse here, he says. That story, Miss Becca says, please. But Winston's already off. telling about how the battle led to where she's standing right now. And when the troops got to the river, the old Rome ferry anchored in the mud on their side. The southern side was right there waiting for them, with Comer, the blind mule, posted up on the treadmill gearbox, ready to get it cranking with one lash of the whip. But Morgan had to leave his horse behind. Black Bess, he says, opening his hands as if the legend were inscribed there. I grew up near the statue of it. From the road you can see his balls. Miss Becca squints to take his measure. That horse was a mare, she says. Listen to the name. A filly with testes? I don't think so. She shakes her head. But that ferry's still down there, except it's been dragged up on the bank and left to rot. Why'd they go do that? Cost too much, she says. When the state quit funding it, I lost half my customers at the mill. Nobody wants to be doing all that driving. You run this mill, Winston says. That's what I do. Winston takes his comb from the cup holder, runs it through his hair, buttons his flannel up, and gets out of the van. You should have told me, he says. It's very fine to meet you, ma'am. He starts telling her about what his boys have been through. She begins leaning in and looking at his family back there. He can see her attitude toward him shifting, which is what he hoped for, which is what he hoped for in people when he wanted to sell them a car. Find that tender spot. Could be anything, and just keep pressing on it. That spot for her seems to be his boys. You got any little ones of your own, he says. Okay, look, she says. How are you with a mill saw, horizontal band blade? My specialty, he says. She studies him. The one you'll be on holds the log stationary, which means the blade's moving along the wood. I know, I'm cool with that. Perfect. Fine then, she says. I've got some gloves and chaps you can borrow today. That's what I'm talking about, Winston says. She lights another cigarette and blows smoke at the fence. This isn't the first time she's bent the rules, but this'll be fine. And the rest of y'all, come wait in my office, she tells Mandy. No, they're good, Winston says. Tell her y'all are good. Thank you. What were they thinking? Dangerous self-invention. I love that. I mean, it makes me, as soon as you said that, you know, the names Thomas Sutpen, Captain Ahab flashed through my imagination. And a very fun thing about writing a character like this is, however monstrous they are, there tend to be moments in the book where they say the truest things. And that's a very scary thought, right? That these sort of monstrous characters can actually reveal something very true about us all and show it. And actually, I mean, the woman who arrives at the end of that scene, Miss Becca, she's about to have her life turned over and her family land taken by this man, and she's about to be put to the test on whether she can get over it or whether she's going to become obsessed with him. And it's a great question to wonder, is it possible not to become obsessed with him? I mean, the way the book works is I became obsessed with him. I think the reader, I hope, becomes obsessed with him. I mean, when he speaks, it sounds like somebody trying to start a boat motor. He just starts going, baby. And those kinds of characters have always been the characters that come most easy to me. They put purpose and, they put purpose to the story. But the heart of the book is certainly not his, it's Miss Becca's. But there would be no story without him, and that's that very endlessly complicated nature of how fiction works. And we're going to wait for the microphone to answer questions, so yep, right behind you there.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that listening to you read that chapter, I'm inclined not to read the book, but to wait for an audio book. Because your reading of the dialogue was so, it just brought me there, more so than I think the written word would.
Thank you. I love reading it. I appreciate it. All right.
Speaking of unreliable narrators, it seems like that is a way of describing political people, candidates, and generally our current government. Just wondering, a lot of my favorite books deal with unreliable narrators, and it seems like you get at truth when you admit that unreliability exists in all of us and steers the ship by correction or by accidental direction. So I was just wondering have you always yearned to write a book with them, or is this just like your tendency?
So this idea of unreliability, I think that to me there are two sorts of different degrees. There's a reliably unreliable narrator, right? Like Benji in The Sound and the Fury. He's reliably unreliable. And then there is unreliably unreliable. I can't say what I've always been drawn to. I mean, I don't know what I'm drawn to until I start writing it and see what's there. I don't come to it with any preconceived notions, but I am interested in writing from characters' perspectives that I might not necessarily agree with. If anybody's going to give a speech in a book, I damn sure better not believe all of it. That's dangerous territory when you do. Otherwise, the novel is going to be working pretty much as a vehicle for your own politics, and that's just a sure way to kill any interesting characters because you're subverting their humanness into ideas.
Well, that's what I like about an unreliable narrator is that you're stretched in ways you don't necessarily anticipate because you sense it. Sometimes it's written, sometimes it's just sensed by the contextualization and behavior of the character. So, do you think of yourself as being I hope you don't mind me asking this. Do you think of yourself as being a particularly Southern author? I mean, you just referenced Faulkner. I was just wondering, is the South like something that you're parsing for yourself in some way, do you think?
I never thought of it until I left the South, but I have no choice in the matter. I've tried to write about stories elsewhere, and it's not quite as easy. I think there's something about the landscape and the lyrical qualities that come along with it, and simply just the old, I've been marinated in the Southern nostalgia of the music, and it makes you yearn for things that are impossible to have, right? The old home place, the little cabin on the hill, right? Want to get back there so bad. I'm not sure I've ever been there, but I know it exists, man. But I think that, I mean, yes, Southern writers, so many Southern writers have helped shape me, but so many other writers have as well. And I think that there's a particular Americanness about what Southern literature can capture in kind of distilled sort of ways.
Well, it seems like it's kind of rife for unreliable nostalgia, actually, and which seems like, I mean, that's something that lives in all of us, but
Absolutely.
there's a particular echoing, yearning problem with the South having been defeated in the Civil War. And I don't know, it's like a whole long historical thread that I still think, like the river you were describing, meanders its way through, like the consciousness.
Yeah. When people lose things, they start telling stories about it. Yeah. Right, and so not only are we dealing with nostalgia, but we're dealing with a sort of reluctance in the speaker to perpetuate it, but doing it nonetheless. And there we have art. Maybe one more question. How are we doing on time?
We're good on time, is it?
Okay.
All right, we got a question over here.
Where did this character come from? Where did this character come from? Was it sudden or was it a slow build for you? How did that happen?
You tell me. He came from Lexington, Kentucky, down into Tennessee. That's a good question. I mean, this character, though I understood him deeply when I first started writing him more than others, there were certain things about him that changed because I didn't. It's weird to say, but I don't think I was ready for him yet, and I had to keep writing into him to understand what kind of a figure he was. This is his transformation. He's always been kind of how he is, but it was in a very different style. The very first draft, it's very strange. I had him nearly silent. He took a vow of silence and he just wouldn't speak the whole novel. And he was this passive looming figure. And now he literally speaks on every page through literally a bullhorn. He went from the quietest character to the loudest character. And I think I don't want to psychoanalyze myself in front of you, but I was trying to silence him. I was scared of him. I don't want to hear all this. But maybe that's exactly when you should start tuning in and listening up, right? Because that's the trouble with writing complex characters, which we're going to need to do to create compelling narratives. You're going to have to reckon with the stories and the characters and the voices that you might not be ready to. And in fact, they might be the most compelling ones on the page because they're very much alive and complicated and put everyone else around them in a pressure cooker. And that's what he did. So it was a process. I kind of understood him pretty quickly through a sound and a longing. But it took me a while to get it right and dialed in to what he is now.
Thank you. Did you have a moment where you knew this character was coming out of you? And do you remember, was there a day or a minute where you knew this character lived as a story to tell and to develop?
In Rome, Tennessee, there is an old ferry that has been pulled up on the shores of the Cumberland. And my dad and my mom and I were driving around the river fishing, and we found this old thing, and I could not believe it. And you can just feel the history, right? Like the old trees and weeds coming up through it. And I had a notebook with me, which I tried to always have, and I climbed up into this old ferry and I got into the old skipper's cabin, and I stood there's a big rusty wheel and you could still spin it around, and I just started writing in that cabin on the river. And I don't think I knew exactly who was gonna come to me, but it was certainly defined by that place and that water, and specifically that old boat. And I started wondering what would happen if somebody tried to resurrect this old boat with so much weird history, and what kind of person would it take, what kind of maniac would it take to do such a thing. And so it's really about place. I mean, he grew out of a place, and I couldn't tell you, it wasn't like total, just like lightning striking, but that boat and the idea that somebody might be as interested in it or more than I was very compelling. So it was a sort of puzzle to put together. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Captain Ahab he has no leg. And I felt I wanted a character who was willing to sacrifice himself in order to get something. And I was surprised. I wasn't thinking about it like that. I think I realized it later. Oh, he's in a line, right? There's a lineage of these guys. It's not pretty, but I'm working in it, I guess. And here we go. I mean, moments like that are truly surprising. If you want your characters to be put under pressurized circumstances, and then just see what happens, right? I think these tough pressurized circumstances can really bring out the essence of a character because they have to make a decision. His decision is different than most of ours would be, but it's for the purpose of something greater than, or it's not greater than himself. It's certainly all for, it's what he does, and it's what he wants, and this is a man who's been working shit jobs his whole life, and he's like, that's now over. I'm done with it. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So, yeah. Who are willing to kind of sacrifice themselves and hurt themselves for just gain, right? And greed. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's right.
We have time for these last two questions.
Sure.
Hi, that was really fun to hear.
Thank you.
I grew up in rural Pennsylvania and have a lot of family from Lexington and rural Kentucky. And I'm very familiar with that vernacular. And I'm very familiar and oddly comfortable in the presence of rednecks.
Good to have you here, sister.
And Appalachian. And my experience has been that there is a lot of very crazy people deep into these parts of the world. And I was just wondering.
Not in New York City, then.
It's a different kind of crazy.
You won't find any crazy people there.
Oh, but it's such a different kind of crazy. It's odd. And I was wondering if you also had that experience growing up in those parts where there were just like really crazy people living in the woods.
I might have been that person
right.
for you. Make good music, don't we?
This might be a little roundabout way of getting to what I'm trying to suss out, but There's a line that struck me in the Darwin Corey song where she's saying to him, "You better get your gun. I don't look for trouble, but I'm not going to run," or something along those lines. And the idea of standing up for something that you believe in, knowing at your depths what that is. And it's something where I've been puzzling about it in today's time, because there's this sense that we don't collectively know how to sacrifice for something that we all believe in or try to believe in or try to put forward, right? It's something that was a part of the American myth, certainly when I was growing up, that, you know, you had movies and books and everything where a hero sort of figured it out that this is where the line is, right? And you said in your story there just now about how your character was willing to sacrifice his hand, to injure himself, to mutilate himself, to gain something for himself, which is exactly the problem that we're facing, right? That it seems like the selfishness of that, as extreme as his, you know, sort of figuring out how to do it to get his gain, but it's still coming out of something that doesn't get shared, doesn't bring the people together to whatever. I'm going to be, you know, fascinated to see how she ultimately resolves that situation, because maybe it's within that answer that we find something of truth to move forward on. But that character was doubly terrifying because of.
Thank you so much. So later in the novel, Miss Becca, she's tending a bar. She's working as a bartender among a few other gigs she's taken up, and she's banned him from her bar, of course. And of course he shows up one night, and he's sitting at her bar, and he's looking around, and his son, which he's been looking for, is there at the bar sitting next to him, and he says, he looks around at her bar, and he says, "Now this place is somewhere, and somewhere is something, and something is everything." That's a homemade form of existentialism that is true and terrifying all at once. Miss Becca is burdened with a greater understanding of something than he is, because he has that sort of hand-hewn existentialism. And yeah, so you just have to, hey, buy the book and read it to see how she deals with it. But yeah, it's such a pleasure to talk about these characters with you. Thank you for being here tonight.
And thank you, Lee, for being here tonight, as well as Lee's family. Thank you very, very much.
My
Have
pleasure.
a wonderful night, everyone.